Well, let me try that again. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Financial Freedom Show. My name is Rob Berger. Hope everyone's doing well. As always, give me a thumbs up, at some point here to let me know you can hear and see me and whatever. Hope everyone's having a good week, had a good Memorial Day. We were at the beach. We got our boat out of storage. We don't have a fancy boat. It's a little pontoon boat with a 90 horsepower motor. And it's David. Thanks for the thumbs up. See, that tells me all is right in the streaming world. Thank you. When I went to pick up this boat, we store it same place every year. And in the lot there, they had boats for sale, and they had a pontoon boat. I've never seen this before. It had twin 450 horsepower motors on the back. That's 900 horsepower on a pontoon boat. Are you kidding me? The motors alone had to be over 100 grand, right? So I went and I said, so how much for the boat out there? They said, it's a little over 300,000. I'm like, well, do you take cash? Let me get my briefcase. Hang on. The thing goes over 80 miles an hour. I said to myself, it's a cool boat and all, but tell me, it seems to me, and by the way, if you own a pontoon boat with twin 450s on the back, please don't take offense to what I'm about to say. But it would seem to me, if I were going to drop 300 large on a boat, I wouldn't get a pontoon boat. I don't know. Anyway, had a good weekend. Our granddaughter absolutely loves that boat. She's just over 2, and as soon as we get going, and of course it doesn't go very fast, but she's right up at the front, holding on, watching, looking straight ahead as we motor through Asswoman Bay, Ocean City, Maryland. So I see Noreen is here, thank goodness, so she can keep everything running smoothly. So I'm going to talk about the topic for tonight very quickly. Then I have an announcement. That'll be fairly quick. And then, I'll answer your questions. So the topic is how you should invest during a recession. But see, I always like to sort of under-promise, over-deliver. So tonight we're going to also talk about how to invest when the economy is expanding, how to invest when there's inflation, deflation, low interest rates, high interest rates, rising interest rates, falling interest rates, a Democrat in the White House, a Republican. The two reasons why this topic came up for me. I see a ton of articles, including on sites that I respect and think, they have good content, with these sort of articles, how to invest, in inflationary times or whatever, or recession, if we might have a recession coming our way at some point. Well, certainly we will. I don't know when, but, and they always bother me. I get emails from a lot of folks. This week I got one, how to invest if we have deflation. Now, don't get me wrong. These are really important questions. It's just that to me, the answer is the same for all of them. And that is to have a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds that cover the market. You could do that dozens and dozens and dozens of different ways. For stocks, you could just own VT, which is a sort of a global stock index fund. You could have the S&P 500, perhaps that in an international fund. You could break it up more and have small cap value, or whatever your sort of low cost index fund way is to sort of in some way capture the market. Again, you might tilt it towards value or small cap or tech, whatever kind of interests you and whatever you believe in. I got no problems with that. The problem is that when we talk about how we should invest in a recession, we're making what I think is a fundamental mistake of investing. And that is, we're not thinking like business owners. I guarantee you, business owners, they certainly prepare for a recession. They think a recession's coming along. They may take steps to shore up their finances. But as a business owner, and I meet a lot of business owners, I guarantee you, we don't sit around and say, a recession's coming. So yeah, I may own 5 rental properties and a dry cleaner. I'm selling them because those are not good in recession. And I'm buying 3 other companies. And a year and a half from now, when the recession's over and it's growing again, boy, I'm going to sell those companies. I'm going to buy some restaurants. Business owners don't think that way. It's just not, it's not how it works. Because it's just in the long term, the time lost, the cost in doing that, the cost in becoming familiar with the business, it just doesn't work. Yet with stocks and even index funds, mutual funds, I think we tend to think that way because for a couple of reasons. One is it's very easy to buy and sell. You got a mouse, not afraid to use it. Click, click, and you've sold. And apart from possibly taxes, if it's in a taxable account, it hasn't cost you anything. It's free. I think that's part of it. But the other part of it is, as a business owner, like I'm a business owner, I own, in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but I own some websites, a YouTube channel. I feel like I'm in more control. I have more influence on how the business does than, say, my ownership of Apple, where I have no influence. And so I think we can kind of feel helpless. And one way to deal with that, it can be very uncomfortable to just sit there and do nothing when our portfolio is down 20 or 30%. And even worse, your coworker at work is telling you how they got out right at the best time to get out. And so by trying to position the portfolio for this possible economic environment, or position it then for this economic environment 6 months later, or it gives us a sense of power and control. And I get that. The problem is, I think, in my view, certainly I'll say this is true for me, I would be far more likely to underperform by trying to guess the next economic cycle, the next interest rate direction or inflation direction, than if I just had a diversified portfolio and just left it alone. So the way I invest in all of those economic environments is the same. I don't change anything. Some of the companies or industries in an index might do well in a recession. I don't know, healthcare, maybe some sort of staples, the Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble's of the world, because everyone needs deodorant. I don't know. I suppose in inflationary environments, companies that are capital intensive could struggle, maybe, because as they replace their expensive equipment, whether they're a railroad or a utility or whatever, they're buying it at significantly higher prices because there's inflation, right? Significant inflation. So there could be certainly some industries that maybe don't do as well. Although predicting that and the timing, it's not as easy as just, well, these do well when inflation is low and these do well when inflation is high. So my answer to that question is just stay the course. Invest the way you invest. Don't change it based on the economic cycle or what you think it will be coming up. Now, what some people will do, you could think of like the all-weather, like the Ray Dalio portfolio, which I've talked about in the past. If you go into the YouTube channel and just search for him, the video will come up. I can actually I won't do it. I built a Ray Dalio portfolio in M1 Finance. There's a link to it below that video. But the reason I mentioned that is because his portfolio kind of tries to do that, to be a good portfolio, have part of the portfolio that's good in one economic environment and part of the portfolio that's good in another. And you can see growth or no growth, for example, inflation, low inflation. The problem is it leads to a portfolio that I think very few people could actually stick to long term. It's like significant amount in gold and precious metals, a significant amount in long-term treasuries. I just don't think most investors, certainly I couldn't, can stick with that kind of portfolio. So anyway, there are portfolios that attempt to sort of be a little bit of everything for every possible type of economic condition. But I kind of wonder, what problem are we trying to solve? You just own the market or something close to it, and you're going to end up getting the market return over the long term. And some years will be good, some years will be bad. So there you go. That's my quick answer to that. Don's already done with my answer. Look at this. Keep doing what you're doing. Heard enough. All right, Don. Yeah. So a brief announcement. Many of you know that I founded doughroller.net in 2007. Some of you found me through that because I had the Dough Roller Money podcast, which I started in 2013. And I also had a Facebook group. And the reason I had the Facebook group, it still exists. The reason I had it was from the podcast, I was getting just overwhelmed with email, not unlike now, where the email is coming from the newsletter and the YouTube channel. But I was getting overwhelmed. I couldn't respond to it. And I thought, well, let's have a Facebook group where, people can join and help each other. So there was no sort of profit motive, didn't make me any money, didn't charge any. Some Facebook groups, will charge. I didn't charge any money for it. And it worked out great. And I think for the most part, it was a very productive, friendly, sort of easygoing environment for folks to ask questions and to learn. Anyway, in 2018, I sold all of that to a company. It turns out a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange. They were headquartered in Israel. And great company, enjoyed working with them, and I love the people there. Continued the podcast for a while. And then more recently, I've been more focused on you guys and this YouTube channel. Anyway, they've reached out to me and said, hey, you want to buy your site back and everything that goes with it? And I said, sure. So I did. But so I now own doughroller.net. In fact, I'll show it to you. This is now under my control. It needs a lot of work. Here it is. I've got a lot of work ahead of me. The site is actually in decent shape, but like I'm sure interest rates are out of date now. Credit card terms are out of date. Articles need to be updated. And I've been working on it, but it's got over 1,000 articles. So this is, it's going to be a big work and ongoing labor of love, I guess. I now have the Facebook group back. So I'm going to start sort of focus on that a little bit. Again, the point is just to make sure it stays a place where people can ask questions, not feel intimidated. I kick people out. Anyone that sort of does self-promotion, I don't even warn them. They're just gone. And that doesn't happen a lot. And if anyone is like attacking another person, I don't, there's no warnings. That's how I handled it when I ran it. I haven't run that Facebook group now in a couple of years. I don't warn people. I don't have time. It's just gone. So I've got that, and I am going to start back up on the Dough Roller Money podcast. I'm still figuring out exactly how I'm going to do that. They also have a YouTube channel. Let's see if I can find it here for you. Well, it's actually called the Dough Roller Money Podcast. And I'm probably going to broaden it to just, I don't know, Dough Roller, or I don't know. But let's see here. Yeah, here it is. Welcome. We started doing these interviews. This was the format that the company wanted to do. And so I did a few interviews with folks, but it's not really my thing the way they set that up. I think it was perfectly fine, just not for me. It's got 5,000 subscribers. So now we got to get this one to 100,000. Anyway, so the basic idea, so just so you know, and then I started to say I'll stop talking. That really doesn't work in this kind of format, but I'll go to your questions. Nothing's going to change about this YouTube channel. Nothing's going to change about my newsletter that goes out every Sunday. I think what the Dough Roller YouTube channel, podcast, it has a newsletter as well, and the site are going to be much broader. So we're focused on investing and retirement, particularly for those in or near retirement, but younger folk can watch too. Dough Roller is going to be much broader than that. It's going to cover, insurance, improving your credit, getting out of debt, building a budget. And my basic goal there is to help people take control of their finances and achieve financial freedom. So in some ways, you could think of it as the 20, 30s, and 40, maybe 50-year-olds. So that's my current thinking, but we'll see. That might change a bit from time to time. I don't know. So there you go. I'm going to start answering questions. This is the first one, but before I do want to, let's see here. Start a poll. Will the economy enter a recession in the next 12 months? Since we were talking about how to invest in a recession, and give your honest answer. I'm going to say yes, no, or I don't know. Those are your three options. This is just a prediction. It doesn't mean anything. It's just your best guess, right? Just like it'd be my best guess. But I'm curious what you guys think. I'm just making sure I spelled everything correctly. I think I spelled 12 correctly. 1, 2. Yeah. Okay. There you go. So David wants to know about the Boglehead Conference. I will be there. In fact, I just bought my ticket. It's in DC. Actually, it's not in DC this year. It's in Bethesda, Maryland, which is a suburb. I think Bethesda or Rockville, but it's in Maryland. But but right outside Washington, D.C. I will be there. I'm not speaking this year, which is okay. I was on a panel last year. Paul Merriman's going to be there, by the way. So I've never actually met Paul in person. So I'm looking forward to meeting Paul. But yeah, I'll be there. And, if you guys are going to be there, I guess, David, last year we got together just at the hotel and had a nice dinner the first night, and happy to do that again. I think that was a lot of fun. So yeah, looking forward to it. By the way, if you want to ask me a question, or just, you don't have to ask a question per se, just ask me to talk about a topic, just put @RobBurger in your request. That way it helps me find it. PH wants to know how to the best invest in AI stocks, artificial intelligence. So I don't know if I wouldn't surprise me if there are AI funds out there. Let me just see. Yeah, there are some. I haven't studied them, but I'll look into them because I think that's a good question. A lot of the funds, like I'm looking at them now, like one of them is just IYW. I'll show it to you in Morningstar here, which is just a technology fund, right? Here it is. If we go to the portfolio, you've got NVIDIA, obviously, has been in the news, and their stock is up in large part because of AI and the hardware they sell. Microsoft, obviously, an investor in chat, OpenAI. Apple, in some way, will be in AI. And in some ways, they're already benefiting, right, from AI because of apps on their app store. Kathy Wood had said that Apple could be in trouble, that Chat GPT could actually hurt App Store sales. When she said it, it's an interesting idea, but my first thought was, well, won't it actually accelerate? Because there'll just be all these new apps that somehow use AI, and won't that actually increase Apple's sales? But I guess we'll find out. Obviously, Alphabet is going to be in it, and they've got Bard. So you could, I suppose, do something like this as sort of an indirect way to bet on AI. Personally, I've been watching Microsoft. If it were cheaper, I'd buy it today for a lot of reasons, not just AI. But I'm too cheap. It's too expensive. So Noreen, do you invest in T-bills or CDs? So I'm today in T-bills. The main reason for me is no state or local income tax. Now, having said that, T-bills are kind of a pain. Like I have some maturing at Fidelity, and I'm going to reach out to them because I think some of the brokers will automatically reinvest in a similar term T-bill. But I don't know if Fidelity does that. It wasn't working for me. So I need to figure that out. But I prefer the tax breaks. Now, having said that, some folks just want the sort of security of an FDIC insured bank. And I get that. There's no really right or wrong here. I can show you the CD rates. What I want to first look at, though, is what are the yields on T-bills? They've probably come down, at least some of them, because apparently we're not going to default. So we got that going for us. Let's see if I can find this for you. And here we go. Probably a little hard to read. But so here's the 4-week. The coupon equivalent is this column right here. And this was the start of the month. So yeah, you can see it was at 590 before the holiday, and it's dropped to 523 as a tentative agreement on the debt ceiling has been reached. Same thing with not as big a drop, but you're still looking at yields 5% all the way out to 52-week is 524. If you compare that to CDs. And let's see, how many CDs are we up to on my site? Let's see here. I'll show you this. So here's my site. Here's a no penalty for 5%. That's an advertiser. By the way, so the way I do this, so look at that. We got 900, we're tracking 955 CDs. I'm really proud of that. And the team that does that, they've just been awesome. By the way, we are going to be adding more brokered CDs. That's what this Fidelity is. And we're going to be making, I want to make it clear that it's a brokered CD because some people don't want brokered CDs. And I get that. In any event, we're going to be adding more. So you can see 540 for Fidelity. So similar to a T-bill, you got a lot of rates here, a lot of options over 5%. See, and this is where I'm just gonna brag on my team a little bit. If you Google best CD rates, who's the first one that comes up? Bank rate, best CD rate. Now, bank rate, they've got teams and teams of people, and it's bank rate. They've even got the word bank in their name. So they've got featured offers. I have no problem with that. These are advertisers. I had an advertiser, right? I didn't have this many, but whatever, good. So when we get to the actual list, here we go. So we get to the best CD rates, 425 to 520. That might be okay. Marcus, yeah, see, this is on the short end. I mean, you're going to get 5%, but it's 6 years. But it's at the low end, 370, not great. Capital One, same thing. Okay, decent, certainly better than the sort of the brick and mortar big banks, but but where are all these banks that come in well above 5%? I don't know. I got a team of 3. We're able to do it. Just taking a cheap shot at bank rate. Yeah, Bob shares my sentiment on how to invest. How did the poll turn out? Okay, so far, I'll let it run a little bit longer. 44% of you think there's going to be a recession in the next 12 months. 28% say no. I don't really, I can't vote on in my own poll. It seems wrong. But I would probably say I don't know. Anyway, let's see here. Oh, here's another AI investing question with a specific fund, which I'm not, at least based on the ticker, I'm not familiar with. XLK. Technologies. Oh, it's kind of the same fund, I think. Here it is, just a technology sector, the Spider Fund. It's probably similar. Let's take a look at the portfolio. Yeah, I mean, not exactly the same, but Microsoft, Apple. The other one we just looked at, it had Alphabet in the top 10, Meta. So maybe a little more concentrated with companies that seem to have a more direct relationship with AI. Accenture, formerly Anderson Consulting, if you go back far enough, that was a long time ago. Cisco, Salesforce, I mean, I'm sure they're going to all use AI in some way, but it doesn't seem to me in quite the same way as an Alphabet or a Microsoft. So I guess we'll see. So my gut tells me the other one might be a little more closer aligned to benefiting from AI, but in fairness, I can't say for sure because I just am not. I mean, obviously I know these companies, but not well enough to know exactly how they're using AI, how that will affect their competitive position. James, 2 thumbs up, 1 for Rob and 1 for the like. I like it. Okay. Alexandria, yes, MD, doctor's in the house. I rewatched. You remember when Conan O'Brien hosted was it the Emmys? Is that the TV one? And it was the second year where Lost didn't get nominated, but the opening skit is him on a plane. It's video, obviously. Him on a plane, and then he runs through all these different, like he was in the set of Lost and 24 and The Office and House. MD, that's the connection. I watched that today. I mean, I've seen it many times. Laugh out loud, funny. Okay. Would you suggest withdrawing your full spend amount quarterly or yearly, or just base spending, knowing the taxes and incidentals can be withdrawn as needed? Well, that's a good question. So my approach has been, although at the moment I don't have to take any money out, but at times I have. It's always, for me, it's just been quarterly. So, dividends get paid quarterly. So in a taxable account, I don't reinvest them. I see the cash there. It just seems convenient. And then I can say, okay, what else do I need beyond that? And so it was just simplicity for me. And that's, I think, how I'll do it. Anytime we need to take out money, is I'll do it quarterly. On the taxes, part of it depends. I'd probably take the taxes out too quarterly. Well, in my case, we would pay quarterly taxes, so it makes sense to take them out quarterly. So yeah, I think I would take them out quarterly. I mean, there could be circumstances where maybe you didn't need to, or your quarterly estimated taxes, you could hit the safe harbor and you didn't have to actually pay everything each quarter that you expected you might have to pay at the end of the year. But I would just do it quarterly. Again, there's no one right way to do it, but for me, that just seems like the easiest way. So Paul wants to know if there's a case to be made for high yield junk bonds in a portfolio. Absolutely. The issue, so if you were to invest, particularly in a high yield sort of index fund, low cost, as part of your fixed income, and you stuck to that plan, you didn't come in and out of it depending on, whatever factors. I think it can. And way back in the day, I owned some high yield. The thing to keep in mind is that high yield can behave a lot like stocks in terms of volatility. Let's see here. Vanguard High Yield Bond Fund. I just want to look one up here. I don't know what the ticker is. VWEHX. Let me make sure that's right, and then I'll show it to you, and it'll help me explain what I'm trying to say about this. This is a high yield corporate, high yield junk bond, same thing. So yeah, here it is. Vanguard High Yield Corporate. This is investor shares. They have Admiral, so it might be cheaper. The thing I want to show you is, let's first go. Actually, I don't want to go here. I want to go to performance, I think. That's not what I want. I want risk. So the standard deviation here, which is a measure of risk or a measure of the fund's volatility, is 8.4. So that's much lower than the S&P 500, but certainly higher than say like a intermediate term Treasury fund. Probably significantly lower. Let's just look at BND, which is just a total bond market fund. Of course, its risk could be close. It's 624. So now I don't know what this is measured over. What time period? The reason I say that is last year obviously increased the volatility of just about every bond fund. So I'm going to guess historically it might be a little lower than that. But the point is, these high yield corporate bond funds can have greater volatility. And normally I look to bonds as sort of the safety part of my portfolio, the less volatile part of my portfolio. So if you were going to put any amount in high yield, you may want to think about what your overall stock bond allocation should be. It's like if you wanted a 70-30, but you wanted some of the 30 in high yield, maybe you actually cut back a bit on the stocks because high yield, it's still a bond, but it's got some behavior that at least leans towards the volatility of stocks. It's clearly not as volatile. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think one could make the argument to include junk bonds. I don't personally. I haven't for a long, long time. But yeah, so what, right? That's just me. Dan or Don, is it Don? Dan, is your opinion of investing in a lump sum right now the same as last year? Yep. I just would always invest a lump sum. In fact, I may have a lump sum to invest here coming up because we were putting money aside for a kitchen remodel. That may not happen now. And I'll just put it all in. So yeah, my opinion on that hasn't changed. John wants to know, why do irrevocable trusts take so long to pay out to beneficiaries? I don't know that there's I'm not a trust and estates lawyer, but I don't know that there's they don't have to. I don't think legally they have to. I think depending on the purpose of the trust, for example, a lot of times you'll put something in a trust so that younger folks don't do silly things with the money. So you might see a trustee over a trust until someone turns 25 or 30 or 35. But I don't think there's any rule, although I could be wrong. So take this with a heavy grain of salt, that an irrevocable trust has to pay out over a minimum length of time. I don't know why that would be. Maybe could there be some tax reasons, maybe? I don't know. That's really a question for a trust and estates lawyer. It's funny, in my years of practicing law, I would get questions like that, or to do a will, or someone got, a traffic ticket. And I said, look, they're getting divorced. I said, look, if there's anything in your life, anything that's very practical, you have a very practical need for a lawyer, I'm going to be no help to you at all, because that's just not the kind of law I practice. Now, if you're an auditor and you audit the financial statements of a publicly traded company, and something goes wrong and the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board sends you a document request, I'm your guy. Well, I was. I'm not anymore. Okay. The Pan wants to know if my thoughts on Deere have changed given the drop in price they've experienced. So to answer that question, I will tell you this. I didn't even notice there had been a drop in price. I really don't track the price of my investments that closely. But now I'm worried. What's going on with Deere? But so this is, let's see here. I'll show you this. This is just one day, 6 months. So it was 448. No, I haven't. Nothing's changed for me. In fact, this will turn out better for me, particularly if the company continues to buy back its own shares at lower and lower prices, right? So no, it doesn't. I haven't sold any. Don't plan to. People need to eat. Jeff, that will never happen. All right. Well, congratulations to Rob Harris. I retired on Friday after 36 years. That's awesome. So today is my financial freedom day. Do you celebrate your FF day annually? Does anyone? I don't. I don't know what my FF day would be. If anything, for me, probably the most important day was June 15th. I think that's right. 2005. That was not what I would call my financial freedom day, but it was the day where I decided that the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. That was the day. I was listening to Dave Ramsey. I'm not really a Dave Ramsey person. I've never followed his 8 steps or whatever. But from time to time back then, I would listen to his radio show, and people were getting on there screaming they're debt free. And we were doing okay financially. We weren't drowning in debt, but we were, I would say, fairly typical. And I just decided, what money can buy me if I do this right. It's not going to buy me a fancy car. It might someday, but the priority shouldn't be that it can buy me a fancy car or clothes or whatever. I can use it to buy my freedom. It was just a light bulb went off. Aha, okay. And then 2 years later, I started Dough Roller, which was connected to that. But that would probably be the day I would celebrate, which is, I guess, just around the corner. All right. But congratulations, Rob. That is wonderful. What the question now is, now what? Now what are you going to do? You're retired. What's your plan? Yeah. So Vinyl points out that I've done pretty well by selecting good stocks. That's fundamental analysis, not market timing. Yeah. Buying something based on value is different than buying or selling something based on economic conditions. For example, if we go into a recession and stocks go down by 50%, I'll buy some Microsoft, probably. But I'm not going to change my asset allocation. I'm not going to move out of any of my index funds. The amount I put in Microsoft will be relatively small compared to because, I don't have that much uninvested money. But yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, when you look at value investors, including famous ones, you'll often find that their success is the result of just a handful of investments. That a lot of their investments turn out to be pretty mediocre. And that's true with me. I've had, I think, success in investing in individual stocks, although I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the actual returns, but I know they're better than the S&P 500. But it's primarily because it's my individual stock portfolio is heavily weighted to Apple, and it has been since 2013. It could have easily gone a different way. MH points out that there's no need for deodorant working from home. Well, I'm not sure my wife would agree with that, but I get your point. I think Kelly wants to know about international funds in a taxable account or not. I think I own one in a taxable account. You do get credit for the foreign taxes paid. I suppose it adds a little bit of complication to your tax return, although my tax preparer has never complained about it. And I don't think she charges me more because of that investment. So, of course, you want to look at which specific fund and what the dividend yield is, because I do want to keep that relatively modest. But like VXUS, what's the yield on a VXUS, which is not one I own in my taxable account? It's 2.9, almost 3%. I guess that's okay. I wouldn't want to get much higher than that, though. But every situation is different. So, tax situation can be different. So I don't know who this person is, but Roger says that watched Josh Scandlin live chat, had to wait through basketball talk for 30 minutes until he talked about the market. Hopefully mine wasn't that bad. Fast Eddie wants to know about what I think about PLTR. I have no idea. It's a Class A. So is there a sales charge? In any event, don't see an expense. What is this thing? I don't see an expense ratio. Oh, this is a company. That's why. Why did I think it was a fund? I don't know a thing about this company. Not a thing. Yeah. Sorry, can't help you. Jeff, this is a really good question. Someone emailed me a similar question. Why do different S&P funds, ETFs, have very different share prices if they all track the same index? So, and someone, I got an email from someone that asked a similar question. I think, if I remember correctly, Vanguard had converted his investor shares to Admiral shares, which there really isn't investor shares anymore, I don't think. I mean, there used to be a different minimum investment. And if you met the higher minimum investment, you got Advil shares and they were a bit cheaper. But in any event, yeah, you can. It's like having two different pies, one for, in this case, SPY, one for VOO, one for FXAIX. You can cut it up into as many different pieces as you want. Each still has the same amount of pie. Just some of them may have more or fewer pieces, and therefore the price per piece is going to change. But if you invest $1,000 into each of these funds, you have $1,000 of S&P 500. Now I'll go to Portfolio Visualizer. Although as I started to do this, I thought, well, what if I put this in here and it doesn't work out? Oh, well, then I don't know what to tell you. So here's what we're going to do. Here's Portfolio Visualizer. I don't know how much data, but let's just do SPY. Oh, let me get the comment off so you can see it. We'll do SPY 100% and VOO 100%. So they're different prices, right? We know that. But they both track the S&P 500. And how much data do we get? Oh, yeah, we're from 2011. Okay, good. There will be some minor difference, by the way. They don't, because the way they track it, but also expense ratios. But as you can see, it's negligible. Vanguard outperformed by like $150 or something. And there's the thing. So yeah, it doesn't matter that they have different prices per share. If one has a lower price, you'll get more shares, right? But in either case, in this example, either one, you'd have $10,000 worth of the fund. It's just that $10,000 would be represented by more or fewer shares. So it's a good question, though. It can be, I don't know, it can be a little confusing. Kelly says she started using the investment tracking spreadsheet and loves it. So that's great. If you just Google best investment tracking spreadsheet, at least when I do it, of course, I'm signed in as me, so that can influence the search results. Why did that not work? Best investment tracking spreadsheet. Yeah, at least at the moment, you'll find my site near the top. Actually, both of my sites, Rob Berger, now doughroller.net. Woo-hoo! It's the same spreadsheet, by the way, I think. I got to go in and make sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the same spreadsheet. There could be minor differences. All right. Mike from Texas says, seems to me that diversification is the key for recession proofing. I agree. I think diversification is key for a lot of reasons. If you're Warren Buffett, you're going to think about things a little differently, but okay. It's like, if you're LeBron James, you're probably going to think about basketball a little differently than most people. I don't really follow basketball anymore, but I was surprised that they handled the Warriors, but then they got beat in the next round. It's like, I don't even know who the good teams are anymore. It's like, which team does Dr. J play on? Did he leave the Sixers? I don't know. That's kind of where I am right now. In any event, yeah, I think diversification, and the great thing about diversification is you don't need a lot of funds to be diversified. Holding 12 funds doesn't make you more diversified than 3 funds, depending on what they are. Okay. So Safel says, why do people talk about the S&P when the equal weighted S&P fund, RSP, has outperformed the last 20 years? So we can look at the performance here real quick. We'll just throw in. So for those that are wondering what this means, a typical index fund is cap weighted, meaning the bigger the company, the bigger it's represented inside that index fund. So if you put $10,000 in the S&P 500, probably 700 of that 10 grand will go to Apple stock. And you go all the way down to the smallest company, it'll be just a fraction. With equal weight, like RSP, it's divided up more or less equally. The net effect of doing that, it's not that there's anything magical about equal weighted. all it's really doing is lowering the market cap of the investment compared to S&P 500. I can show you that in a minute. You could accomplish the same thing with like an S&P 500 and maybe a smaller mid-cap fund, like a combo. I think also maybe RSP probably tilts a little more towards value, but we'll see in just a second. Anyway, so here they are. So this only goes back, he said 20 years, but I've only got data for 14 years. Well, here it's underperformed a bit, by 1%. If you go back further, maybe it did do a little better. This is just the data I have. Yeah. I just honestly just prefer a total market probably. So if we look at RSP, well, let's look at VU first. So this is going to be large cap, probably tilting a little towards growth, but still in the blend category, I'm guessing. Yeah. So here it is. It's a large, meaning the companies that are in that fund are large, obviously, and it's in the BLD is blend, a blend between value and growth. Think of value as companies that are cheap relative to their earnings. Growth companies are not cheap relative to their earnings, but they're growing their earnings at a faster clip. Yeah, which one's better? Yeah, sometimes growth wins out, sometimes value wins out, but there's the S&P 500. I'm going to guess RSP is somewhere down in here, but we don't need to guess. We can look. And I could be very wrong. No, about right, more or less. There it is. So it's much smaller, still large companies. I mean, if we look at the market cap, the average market cap of the companies is still 36 billion, but obviously much, much smaller than the Apples and Microsofts of the world. And it tilts a little bit more towards blend. I don't think it's necessarily a bad way to go. You just have to understand you're not mirroring the market, because trying to mirror the market is not just about what you invest in, but how much you invest in each of those things. That's why most index funds are cap weighted. I think that's why. Maybe there's another reason. Okay. All right. By the way, I'm watching Silo. Excellent show. It's the kind of show I don't want it to end. Very well done. And The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. The language, like, it's not really for kids. The language can be a little rough. It's one of the best shows out there, I think. I think this season is the best season, and I think the last episode was the best episode. Really good. All right. Well, Mark says, I bought a 20-year bond yielding 4.05% with a 4% coupon. So let's talk about that. What does that mean? How can you have a 4% coupon? And like, what is that? Like, do you hand in your coupon and they scan it and you get a discount? With a yield of 4.05%. So here's the deal. The coupon is just the interest rate, the interest that the bond will pay. It'll $10,000 bond, it'll pay 4% a year. 4% of 10 grand, that's the interest you'll get. They call it a coupon because you actually used to, like paper bonds, you used to like actually tear off the little coupon and present it and get your interest. They still call it a coupon rate. So 4%. So what does it mean that his yield is 4.05? Well, it means that $10,000, I don't know how much he put in, but I'm just going to use 10,000 as an example. When he bought that $10,000 bond, he didn't pay 10,000 for it. He paid slightly less. And when you take the 4%, and do the math into this bond that's for 10 grand, but cost him just a little bit less, you get a yield of 4.05%. Now, the issuer of the bond doesn't care what you pay for the bond. You can pay a lot more than the 10,000, a lot less. That doesn't change their contractual obligation to you at all. They're still going to pay you 4% on the 10 grand. And when it matures, they're going to give you 10 grand back. Doesn't matter what you paid for it. Anyway, was this a good move? I don't know. I'll tell you in 20 years. I mean, it doesn't strike, on the one hand, it doesn't strike me as a bad move. But on the other, 20 years is a heck of a long time. And I just don't know what, rates are going to do between now and then. I do know that if you hold it to maturity, you'll get your 4.05 for sure. Oh, assuming it's, there's no default. But it's hard to tell. I don't know. I don't know. And I hope people aren't put off by how often I answer these questions with I don't know. It really is, I think, important to know when you don't know. I don't know. I write a book. I don't know. That's what I'll title it. Probably wouldn't sell. People don't like that. People want confidence. They want the Jim Cramer ringing the bells. And I've got confidence. I'm going to speak with authority. And I'm going to tell you that everything's going to be okay. All right. Conscience wants to know if I have a favorite budget style. So my favorite budget style back in the day was to pay myself first, to save and invest my money as soon as the paycheck came in and spend the rest. You can refine that a bit with what's called the one number. I think it's called the one number budget. So you have your income, you figure out all of your sort of fixed expenses, rent, mortgage, utilities, car payment, subscription to chess.com, the important things. And then you also have to figure out those things that are periodic expenses. They're not every month, but you're going to pay your car insurance every 6 months or whatever, your HOA every year. You're going to maybe get gifts at holidays and birthdays throughout the year. So figure out all of those and sort of divide by 12. And then what's left is your one number budget. That's what you have to spend. That's one approach. I think it's simple. One of the things I tell folks that are just starting out, whatever budget you follow, is when you've got to buy something before the next payday. You're down to a quarter tank of gas. You got to fill up. Your credit card bill is due 3 days before your next payday. Fill up the gas tank. Pay those bills immediately. Don't let the money sit in your checking account. Pay them immediately. But the one number budget is kind of what I did, although I didn't always do all that math. Another approach I like, although I never followed this, but I've talked about it in the past, is the 3-category budget. The way you normally budget, I always do, you have all these categories. You need to list them all out, whatever, and that's fine. But you don't need to track most. I don't need to track a category for gas in my car. When the gas tank's empty, I'm going to put gas in it. I'm not going to overspend. I'm not going to, sit there gassing up the car with gas spewing out of the tank, spending more than I should. By the way, some of you may drive a lot. Maybe you do need to budget for gas. But the point is, there are a lot of categories of spending. I might want to have some rough idea, but I don't need to track it every month. So figure out the categories that you need to track and set limits. Could be eating out, could be buying electronics. It may not be a category in the traditional sense, like, again, eating out. It could be your category that you have to track could be how much money I spend on the weekends. Maybe that's your category, because you tend to blow your budget on the weekends. It's not always for restaurants or buying electronics or whatever. It could vary from weekend to weekend, but it's weekend spending or it's after work spending. So there's different ways to think about a category. But I think for most people, 3 categories probably covers most of the ways you overspend. Those are 2 ideas. There you go. All right. Desert Twilight would love to see you at the Bogleheads conference. Let me just check the poll. I'll bring it to an end. 46% say yes, so pretty much the same. All right. So here's Brad, a little late joining tonight, enjoying my first summer in retirement, sitting in a lounge chair overlooking the lake. Beautiful evening in Northwest Indiana. Very nice. Good for you. I was watching the first episode of Lasso, and they were talking about Hoosier, the movie, and one guy wanted to know why in the world they called it Hoosiers. I thought that was funny. I don't even know what a Hoosier is. I know what a Buckeye is. So we're in Ocean City. We're going out on this pier. The guy's got one of those folding chairs, and it's an Ohio State Buckeye chair. And so I'm like, oh, this is great. OHIO, right now. I said, are you a Buckeye fan? He looked at his chair and goes, no, I found that in the trash. What is wrong with this world? Okay. What are my thoughts on the 40-30-30 portfolio? I'm not sure what the 40, do I know what the 40-30-30 portfolio is? 40-30-30 portfolio. I don't know. Institutional investor, the 40-30-30. Let's see here. What is it? 40% stocks, 30% in bonds, 30% in alternatives. That wouldn't be for me. I wouldn't put 30% in alternatives. I just don't feel comfortable doing that. Like, I guess precious metals, maybe real estate. I don't have an issue with real estate. Commodities, I just wouldn't put 30% in that for me. So Kat wants to know my thoughts on the nuts and bolts of decumulation. In other words, spending your money in retirement. Keep allocation constant and withdraw annually. I tend to think what I've done so far, what I plan to do is keep my allocation more or less constant. And I'll probably withdraw quarterly, as I mentioned earlier. I think you could do it annually. That would be fine. I don't see massive changes to my allocation at all. So, yeah, that's my approach. It just, part of it is just simplicity. And I can't think of a reason. Well, I might be able to think of some reasons why to do it differently, but none that really apply to me. I don't see, I guess one exception would be, if you retired really young, that might affect it, I suppose. One could argue that ship has sailed for me. But I don't know. I'm going to keep it more or less constant. All right. A lot of discussion on AI. Maybe I should do some videos on my views of AI. I'd have to first determine exactly what they are. To me, it's not just AI, but also robotics could significantly change the way we live. A lot of robotics of course, has already affected like manufacturing, for example. But like within our own homes, I guess if you throw in vacuum cleaners, maybe, but for the most part, I don't think it's had significant influence. But I think that the time is coming where robotics will have a much greater impact on more jobs and eventually in our homes. And when you add in AI, I think it's going to be pretty dramatic. But how that's going to play out in the market, that's, think about airplanes. I mean, talk about a dramatic change in the way we travel. But investing in airlines has been tricky business. So same thing with the internet, right? I mean, there were certainly winners and losers, but who would have guessed? Maybe you got lucky, or maybe you're brilliant. You guessed right and picked the right companies 25 years ago. But I think a lot of people didn't. I didn't try, but okay. C wants to know, says, I'm helping my mom out creating a first Fidelity account. She's 66 and retired. What account is she supposed to create? Well, excuse me, I'm parched. Well, what is she going to put in there? Is she transferring an account from somewhere else? And if so, what kind of account is it? If it's an IRA, you're going to transfer it in as an IRA. And you can call Fidelity. They can help you do this. Don't try to do it on your own. If it's a brokerage account, you can transfer it in kind. There are some exceptions to that, particularly with maybe mutual funds, potentially. But again, call Fidelity. They can help you out. If it's just cash, she has cash and she wants to put it in a Fidelity account, then I think the question depends on what is she going to do with it. Cash management account might make sense if she plans to just keep it there and spend it. But if she's going to invest it, then that would be a brokerage account. So a lot of it depends on what kind of account it's coming from. And there might be multiple accounts and what her plans are with the money once it gets there, I think. And there may be other issues, but Fidelity has got great customer support. So just call them. They'll help you. So this is interesting. NX says, have you looked at Portfolio Pilot? So I've looked at it in the sense that I've gone to the website. And I'll show it to everyone. Here it is. AI-driven investing guide. So let me just tell you, I don't know a thing about Portfolio Pilot, but when I see things like this, boost your returns 3 to 6%, red flags immediately. Yeah, I am not buying it. I don't know a thing about it. I'm not buying it. That doesn't mean it's not a good service. I don't know. I think, but I would be very, very cautious about turning to any sort of AI-driven investing approach. Again, Portfolio Pilot could be fantastic. I don't know. The other thing, let me just see something here. I am going to look more into this. I want to look up something real quick. And I'll be with you in a minute. See if I can find something on Forbes. No. Okay. I couldn't find what I was looking for, but you know, I know enough about it to have been to the website and poked around. I don't know how they claim AI will help. I find it highly unlikely that artificial intelligence can boost your returns by 3 to 6%. I'm dubious. Okay. So Desert Twilight, my M1 Finance 5% high yield savings account was great. Unloaded all my extra cash. Yeah, they've got a 5% account now, and I think they give you greater like one easy way to get. Yeah, here it is. That's a big 5. That's not just any 5%. That's a big 5%. But you'll notice here, I don't know how many of you keep 5 million in cash. It's not a problem I have, but it's one way to get access to an easy way to get access to higher FDIC insurance limits. This is, of course, not the only way to do it. A lot of the other brokers offer something similar. They've really been promoting this. They're an advertiser of the site. I don't think I talk about M1 Finance a lot. I like them. I've not really promoted the savings account. I don't know why, by the way. I should. 5% is pretty good. Although I wonder, do I have M1 Finance on my own site? You think I would know, but like I said, people help me with this. Let's see. No, so here's savings accounts, and M1 Finance is not there. I should add it. It's not the highest, but it's up there. We'll get that added. Okay. Clarice says that Fidelity does automatically roll T-bills over, but only if you buy new issue, which is what I always buy. But for some reason, something happened. I don't know what, and it didn't work. But all right, I am going to. I'm going to jump down I'm just going to scoot down here randomly, try to take some questions, down in the cheap seats, which are my favorite. So James wants to know my take on international funds. As many know, I invest in international funds. I'm not a believer in investing only in U.S. stocks. I know Jack Bogle was. I know Warren Buffett is. What do they know about investing? You got to decide what's best for you. I'm not comfortable owning just U.S. stocks. I think a lot of folks have taken the approach of U.S. only, in part because U.S. stocks more recently, last decade not the first decade. I mean, from 2000 to 2010, international stocks actually outperformed. But since then, U.S. stocks have obviously done extremely well. But I'm much more comfortable allocating some to international. Trap says, is Schwab taking over Advantis? I hadn't heard that. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look into that, but I haven't read anything about that. Not that I, necessarily would, but I normally would come across something like that. Are there any bonds that are FDIC insured? Not that I know of. What's FDIC insured are, certain types of accounts at member FDIC banks. Could there be an exception out there? Some kind of bank bond? I don't think so. If there is, I'm not aware of it. It's news to me. Oh, I read this comment. I thought this said the daughter was turning 18 months in 4 months. Do you have any recommendations for starter student credit cards? I'm like, boy, they're getting started early, young. Well, let's go to all cards and see what I've got there. And I'll tell you which ones I personally would probably prefer. Student, oops, that's not what I want. I'll show this to you in a second. Here we go. Hang on, let me pull the comment down. So I like Freedom Student. It's no fee. Journey is okay. Probably, some of these I don't like. I need to update this page. This is not a good page. Of all of these, man, I need to work on this. The Capital One card could be okay. Chase Freedom I like. But one that's not listed on here that's also good, although I'm not a huge fan of Discover credit cards, but they have student cards that I think are decent. Here they are, so you can check that out. I think one of those should probably do it. I kind of like Chase as my personal favorite, I think. I applied for a Citibank student credit card when I was a freshman in college, and they denied my application. I was so bummed. It's probably for the best. Okay. I'm scrolling down. By the way, questions on fitness, nutrition, certainly welcome. So today I had a protein shake. Protein powder's got no sugar in it. Whole milk, blueberries. Then I had some cottage cheese. I love cottage cheese. Then I had plain Greek yogurt with blueberries. That was basically all I ate until dinner. I did some strength training. Today was the pull day, so I did pull-ups, rows, and curls. And then I did an hour and a half of yoga, Bikram hot yoga. And then I had chicken broccoli stir fry with quinoa. And like a lot of it for dinner. I almost fell asleep about 10 till 7. Yikes. All right. I don't know. By the way, I have no idea why I just told you what I ate for food today. I don't know. I can't explain it. So this question, this is from GG. How about 70% VTSAX, which is, I'm so used to the ETFs now, but that's just total stock market, right? Yes. 10% VSIAX, which is international. Oh no, sorry, small cap value. SCHD was which is sort of large cap value, and 10% bonds for a 48-year-old looking to exit at 55 to 58. Well, so personally, I would want international in there. That's my preference. I don't think, well, we just talked about it. I know not everyone agrees. My big question for you is, what do you mean by an exit? Do you mean you're going to retire? Or are you going to want to spend all of this money in as little as 7 years? It's a big difference. Because if you're going to want to spend all this money in, say, 7 years, for me, this would be too risky given that time frame. But if you mean sometime in the next 7 to 10 years, you're going to retire and then start spending the money, slowly, right? 2, 3, 4%. Then I can tell you, I was at 90-10 in about that time period. So I thought it was reasonable for me. Obviously, I don't know your circumstances and your risk tolerance and all those sorts of things. But I think, in my view, again, I would personally prefer some international exposure, but I think this would fall within what I would consider to be a reasonable portfolio. But again, I don't know what you mean by exit. Kit wants to know my opinion on an ETF. Okay. Huh. I probably like this one. GARP. Growth at a reasonable price. That's what GARP means. The world according to. Invesco, S&P 500 GARP. I don't know if we've talked about this fund in the past. So the idea is, growth stocks tend to be expensive relative to earnings. So the idea of GARP, growth at a reasonable price, is you get growth stocks, but that aren't crazy expensive. Now, what's that mean? Well, in this case, what you really get is a blend fund, and you get it. It's large cap, but right on the cusp of mid cap. I don't know. Let's see how many. So it has 72 holdings. You can see the top 10 here. I don't dislike this fund. I guess my question would be, why not just either an S&P 500 or a total market fund? What is it are you trying to achieve by using this fund instead? I like the concept of growth at a reasonable price, but the net result is just basically, in this case, a blend fund, which again isn't a bad thing, but then it kind of brings me back to why not just an S&P or a total market fund. But I think this is pretty cheap, right? Yeah. Well, it's 33 basis points, the expense ratio. So yeah, I go back to then, for me, I would just stick with a lower cost total market or S&P 500 fund for me. My question to you would be, what are you trying to achieve with this particular type of fund that you're willing to pay an extra roughly 30 basis points for it? Adam wants to know my opinion on a rising glide path to minimize sequence of return risk to start retirement. So what's Adam talking about? It's like, Rob, it's late. Are we flying a plane? What's happening? So glide path just refers to the amount of stocks you have in your portfolio. The typical glide path is you've got a lot of stocks when you're younger, and as you age, you start to glide into retirement by lowering your stocks, which of course increases your allocation to bonds. And then here's retirement. So what you don't want to do is hit the wall. I don't know what the wall would be. You want to land it right there, and then just. Now, What's the what there? Well, could be a 60-40 portfolio, 70-30, whatever. Some will say, actually, you don't land it right at retirement and then keep your allocation constant. Some say you keep actually gliding down even through retirement, and you end up somewhere down. Can you see this? This is very important. Somewhere down here. So you might hit retirement at, I don't know, 65-35, but end up at, I don't know, 55-45, 5 years after retirement. Some of the target date retirement funds do that. I don't feel strongly about it. With the rising glide path, it looks like this. And this happened to me once at Reagan National Airport. Scared the crap out of me. It's raining. It's windy. It's nighttime. I'm coming home from a business trip. We're coming in. First of all, if you ever landed at Reagan National, if you're landing from I say the north, but it's really the west, because of restricted airspace, they have to fly over the Potomac. Well, the Potomac, turns out it doesn't flow in a straight line. So you're doing this. And then when you get to the very end, you make this sharp right turn and you land. Well, we were actually landing from the south. And from the south, the Potomac is wide and it's straight. All good, right? But it's raining and it's dark and we're doing this, and, you feel a wheel touch down. And it's one of those landings where you're like, I think they only got one wheel down. And then all of a sudden you hear the engines rev up and we take off again. And then we bank hard right. I'm like, this is not good. And it turns out there was an airplane on the runway. So anyway, that's the rising glide path. Your stock allocation goes down and down and down and down and down. And it gets really low, maybe 30% stocks, 70% bonds. And then once you retire, it starts to go back up. You take off just like that scary airplane. And you say, well, wait a minute, Rob, that doesn't make any sense, because then you're going to have this high stock allocation and you're like your 80s or 90s, or you could be 100% stocks. Well, so first of all, how do you actually do all of this? I mean, it's easy, I guess, to sell stocks and buy bonds as you're getting closer and closer to retirement. But then how do you take off again? Well, one way is just to spend your bonds. Don't spend any of your stocks. So your bonds will come down. Of course, stocks hopefully do well. They go up. And if you do that for 10 or 20 years, eventually you're back to 90% stocks, maybe 100% stocks. And that may seem scary, but there's good news. You're going to die. See, that's the good news. Because once you get to like 80, 90, 100% stocks, you're like, whatever, 80, 85, 90, you don't have that much longer to live. And so you can handle the volatility. But when you're 65, that's the scary time from volatility perspective, 65 to maybe 75, right? That's the sequence of returns risk. Not to worry, you're going to be like 60, 70% bonds or whatever. And so you don't have a particularly volatile portfolio. That's the theory. Kitsis has done a lot of work on this. Dr. Wade Pfau has done a lot of work on this. They came out with a paper, I want to say in 2014, but I could have that wrong, where they'd modeled this. Where they've come out, I think, and Michael has been on the show. I don't remember if we talked about the rising glide path. You can look up his interview, in the channel. Where does this work or not? Just depends. Sometimes it doesn't work out. You'd have been much better off with sort of a traditional glide path. It just depends what the market does. So I'm not particularly fond of this approach. I would prefer to deal with sequence of returns risks in other ways, like a fairly low withdrawal rate to begin with, or great flexibility. I might start with whatever, 4.5%, but I can cut back a lot if I have to. I just personally, that's been my planned approach. But I would say, as you're thinking through what's best for you, a rising glide path is worth considering. And you'll remember it, because you'll remember my goofy little plane almost crashing story. There you go. Is it getting late? Yeah, I'm kind of tired. All right. Sometimes I think, you guys have probably already, shut your computers down and gone home for the night. No one's actually watching. I'll just keep talking to myself for a couple of more hours. Here's Mike on the team approach between his wife and himself on budgeting versus investing. My wife and I have a good team approach too. I do it all. She's okay with that. All right. Am I close to Annapolis? I mean, I'm an hour away. Barbara, look at this. She's been using the same Excel spreadsheet for 35 years. Make sure you got a backup. That's amazing. Do you have all your data going back 35 years? That's one of the reasons. So I budget in the sense that I want to know after the fact where our money went. I don't need to know how much we've spent per category as we progress through the month. But at the end of the month, I want to know where the money went. And so, I've used Personal Capital at times. I've used Quicken. I've used YNAB. I like Monarch Money. I've used Simplify. Part of this is just because I like to test these out. But I like Tiller, which is a spreadsheet-based budgeting tool. You can use it as Excel or Google Sheets. But what they do is they connect to your accounts and download all your data for you. But I'm impressed. The same Excel spreadsheet for 35 years. Well, so Red Bull Green Bear wants to know my thoughts on investing in a portion of layer 1 blockchains. I don't know what those are. I know what Ethereum is. I think I was listening to, I don't listen to a lot of financial podcasts, but I was listening to Morningstars, and they were interviewing, was it more? No, it was, no, Rational Reminder, I think, podcast. I like that podcast. Was it Blanchett? They were, David Blanchett, they were interviewing someone, and he was talking about avoiding regret. A lot of folks are afraid of losing, right? Afraid of market losses, but a lot of people are afraid of missing out, right? And for people that are afraid of and by the way, I'm not saying that Red Bull Green Bear is afraid of missing out, but if you are, I personally don't have a problem with taking some relatively small portion of your portfolio, 5%, let's say, which is not insignificant, and investing in something that you just, for some reason, feel compelled to invest in. Could be micro caps, could be gold, could be Ethereum. I don't know what Pulse Chain is, but I know what Ethereum is. Or using it to invest in individual stocks. If it's going to keep the rest of your portfolio in place through good times and bad, it might be money well spent, and who knows, you might get lucky. I personally don't think that crypto is generally a good investment. You could get lucky, but you could invest in lottery tickets and get lucky. And I know they're not exactly the same thing, but I think probably more people have lost money in crypto than have made it. Although I guess I don't have data to prove that. That would be how I would bet if I were betting. All right, we're getting kind of down to the wire here. Let me scoot down. Marcus says, is there any chance you will develop a new and improved sequence of return? I think it's sort of a way to draw down your money. So I am working on a book that is basically, the book is designed to answer 3 questions. How much can I spend in retirement each year without going broke? How should I actually invest my money in retirement in light of my answer to the first question? And then, having invested the money, how in the world do I get the money out in the form of a consistent retirement paycheck? Those are basically the 3 key questions. I don't think I'm going to come up with some highly specific withdrawal strategy, where you have some very specific asset allocation and you draw down the funds a certain way and you calculate your withdrawal percentage to the 100th place, and because I don't think that's very realistic. My approach, at least so far in the book, is to talk about it from a slightly higher level. I'll certainly talk about different withdrawal strategies and the pros and the cons, but the ultimate conclusion, and to me, in some way, you have to have flexibility. And I'm going to talk about ways to have flexibility. But I think if you have flexibility, the exact approach matters a lot less. Certainly, I suppose you could get an extreme approach, and that might not be best. But if you have flexibility in your spending, and flexibility can come from a lot of ways. It could come from equity in a house that you're not factoring into your 4%, but if you had to, you could downsize or move. You may not want to, but if you had to, you could. Or it could be from the ability to go back and do a little bit of work. Or it could come maybe from the purchase of an annuity, not a fancy annuity with high fees, but your basic, fixed. It could be deferred, but fixed, single premium annuity, potentially. Also to some extent, maybe the way you claim Social Security can be part of that flexibility. There's a book which I've talked about in the past, which is this one. I think the guy is an engineer, but I mean, it's got charts like this, and he analyzes countless withdrawal strategies and rebalancing strategies. And it's a great book. I mean, I enjoy it. I think for most people, though, you're probably not going to read that book and come away with, okay, I got a plan now. It's almost more of an academic thing. Although he kind of does, Marcus, what you're suggesting. But whenever a withdrawal strategy gets highly specific on a very specific asset allocation and withdrawal strategy, I get real nervous that following this may not produce the results that historical analysis suggests that it might. So, that was a long-winded answer. I don't even know what I just said. Okay. Yeah, Pan mentions that the AI thing reminds me a lot of the internet bubble. I think people are racing to jump on the bandwagon and slap AI on everything, like everything was a .com back in the day or whatever. I think AI, again, is going to do some remarkable things, and I'm already using it in my business. I'm using it a lot to code. I'm using it to write content, not in the sense of, hey, ChatGPT, write me an article on the best allocation and asset allocation in retirement, because the results I would get would be silly. But you can use it. I kind of think of it as a very, very rough first draft of things. You can also use it for research. You can use it for formatting. And it's funny. I can load articles I've written. Say, okay, take a look at this. Now I want you to write an article using the same style, and it will produce content that sounds like me, for better or worse. All right. One of the thing I will say about using it for writing is it's really useful when you already know the field. So like I was doing some work on some sort of financial tools, and I wanted to include a section. I don't remember which site this was for, but on a particular budgeting tool, I think, that I knew very well. So I asked ChatGPT, summarize this tool, list its key features, and then its pros and cons. Well, I already knew the answer to all those things. But by letting it do the first draft, it saved me a lot of time. And then I edited it significantly. Some things it got right, some things it got wrong in my view. Well, some things were just flat out wrong. But it saved me 20 minutes of time and a lot of typing. So Food Guy wants to know if it's risky to put an emergency fund in a Treasury Money Market Fund. I personally don't think so. I mean, obviously with the default thing, which I guess is resolved, there was some question about whether that could be an issue. I don't personally have an issue with it, although I probably wouldn't put all of my I like some of my emergency fund in a good old FDIC insured bank account. The bigger question I think I would ask is, why do you want to put it in a Treasury Money Market Fund? And maybe it's the taxes. So I guess, I might answer the question. But short of like the government defaulting, and even then I would assume it would only be a timing issue, I think it's generally safe. That's my view. All right. It's 8:29. Let me scroll all the way to the bottom. Does this mean Jeff is bored? Look at that. Or is he tired? I don't understand I can't believe that. All right. I've also been watching From, which is okay. I kind of like it. I don't know. We'll see. The Pan says that my average return rate in my book was too optimistic. So no matter what rate you use when you make some sort of compound interest or return calculation, someone's going to not be happy with it. And so when I was writing the book, I thought, well, I could go super conservative, but what would be my basis for that? I could, do the Dave Ramsey 12%, but that didn't seem right. And so I just picked Vanguard's return, I think on an 80-20 portfolio, which is 9.3 or something like that. It changes a little bit. And that, I don't know though that I would use that if I were planning out my retirement, for example. I certainly wouldn't use that because the risk of being wrong is the consequences of being wrong on the low end, right, are too great. But I take no issue with someone else, for their own analysis using a different return assumption. Vinyl is already replacing me with AI. With video AI, Rob could be replaced completely. Maybe. I have wondered, like with my websites, will eventually, if I get traffic from search engines, but will that dry up at some point? But, if it does, it does. I mean, it's what are you going to do? I do think the way we get information, the way we search for information is going to change because of AI. And I think it's probably already changed some already. And it's going to affect website owners like myself in some way. I do think having things like YouTube and a connection with people helps. But yeah, it will change things. I just don't know when or how. And when it does, if it does, that's okay. All right. I am going to call it a night because it's 8:32. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. John says, hey, Rob, 1981 is here. 18% interest rates coming. See anything wrong with Treasury investing for now? Well, I was investing in 1981, and I got 16% on a 6-month certificate of deposit. And we were scared to, I've told this story before, but we were scared to lock our money down in a CD for longer than 6 months because we were afraid rates were going to go higher. I really don't see 18% interest rates coming. Now, that doesn't mean they won't. But I don't see how inflation would have to get insanely out of control, which it was in the 70s and early 80s. Volcker, went to battle against it. I don't know. I don't see that happening. I mean, again, I'm a terrible fortune teller, but I don't know. That's just not, of all my concerns, that's not one of them. But you never know. All right, gang. When we end the show, it always bothers me that I, say goodnight and there's no one to say goodnight. No one responds back because you can't. I'm still sitting in my basement talking to camera, but I know you're there and I appreciate all of you. We'll see where Dough Roller Money Podcast goes. I'm definitely going to fire it back up in the Dough Roller YouTube channel. All of this is going to take some time, and the Dough Roller newsletter. So I'll have more information on that as the days and weeks unfold. But I appreciate, as always, all of your support and the fact that so many of you join these live Q&As. Maybe I'll start a live Q&A show for Dough Roller, but more general personal finance questions, not just investing in retirement. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, hope you have a great week. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.